I turned 32 on the night my world split in two. My name is Emily, and at my own birthday dinner, the one night I should have felt surrounded by love, I watched my sister rest her hand on a small baby bump while my husband stood beside her. His hand sat smugly on her shoulder, their expressions crafted into some grotesque portrait of solidarity. And then with a smirk, my sister Lauren announced she was pregnant with my husband's child. The room fell silent. Forks paused midair, eyes darted between us, and the air thickened with expectation. Everyone was waiting for me to break, for the tears to fall, for my voice to rise, for me to collapse under the weight of humiliation. After all, that was the role I had been assigned since childhood, the fragile one, the emotional one. But I didn't give them that satisfaction. I lifted my glass of Pinot Noir, let the silence stretch until it hurt, and smiled. They thought they had orchestrated this play. What they didn't know was that I had rewritten the script weeks earlier. To understand why my calm unnerved them so much, you'd have to understand who I was in our family. Growing up, Lauren was the golden child, the one whose desires were treated like commandments. When she wanted a $1,000 prom dress, my parents cracked open a savings bond. When I needed money for textbooks, I was told to get a part-time job. I became the fixer, the steady one, the invisible one. They mistook my reliability for weakness, my quietness for lack of fire. That was their first mistake. 6 weeks before my birthday dinner, I had stumbled upon the truth. It was a Tuesday, ordinary in every way, until I picked up the shared family iPad to search for a recipe. A notification blinked on the screen, an email from Lauren to Mark. The subject line was just 2 words: our plan. I should have looked away. I should have pretended I hadn't seen it. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, and suspicion even more so. I opened it. Inside was a confession written in sickening detail, their affair, their plans, and their scheme to announce the pregnancy at my birthday. They believed the public humiliation would break me so completely I would agree to a quick, quiet divorce. In Lauren's own words, she'll be too broken to fight back. She never fights back. I dropped the iPad. The crack on the tile floor echoed the fracture inside my chest. For a moment I pressed my back against the bathroom door, silent tears choking me, the life I thought I had dissolving into ash. That was the only time I allowed myself to break. One silent scream, and then rage. That rage became my weapon. I called Jessica, my best friend since college. When she heard the tremor in my voice, she begged me not to cry, not to let them take me down. But I wasn't crying anymore. I was planning. I whispered into the phone, "I'm going to burn it all down." The affair was the surface wound, but deeper rot festered beneath. For years, Mark and I had tried to have a child. I wanted nothing more than to become a mother. After endless pleading, he finally agreed to fertility testing. He went alone, came back with a practiced sadness in his voice, telling me the doctor had said he was fine. It must be me. I carried that shame like a stone for a year, believing I was broken. But in the glow of betrayal, I saw the lie for what it was. I asked Jessica, who worked as a paralegal, to help me find the real results. It took weeks of signed consent forms dug out of old files, hours of phone calls, and a little clever maneuvering. Then one evening, an email landed in my inbox. My hands trembled as I clicked the PDF. I scrolled past medical jargon until my eyes caught on the word that shattered everything: sterile. Mark had been diagnosed with a zoospermia, zero sperm motility. He could never father a child. The cruelty of his deception knocked the air from my lungs. Not only had he cheated with my sister, but he had let me believe for years that I was the broken one. He stole my hope, my self-worth, and twisted them into chains to keep me silent. But now that very lie would become the key to his downfall. Jessica's legal instincts sharpened my rage into precision. Together we traced financial records, looking for cracks in his facade. That's when I found it: a $20,000 cash withdrawal during the month he claimed to have paid for expensive tests, not to the clinic, but to my sister. And it didn't stop there. With the help of a private investigator, we uncovered streams of payments to Lauren: her rent, her car, her designer handbags. But the final blow was even worse: a $200,000 transfer from Mark's corporate account to a title company used as a down payment for a house. A house not in his name, not in hers, but in my mother's. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a conspiracy, my husband, my sister, and my own mother. That night at the restaurant when Lauren announced her pregnancy, she thought she was driving the dagger into me. But she didn't know I had come armed with evidence sharper than any blade. In my purse, I carried two documents, his medical report and the PI's financial report. Together they were dynamite, and I was ready to light the match. The restaurant air grew heavier as I placed my wineglass down the stem, trembling only slightly between my fingers. Lauren's words still lingered in the air like poison pregnant with my husband's child. Gasps had already died down, replaced by whispers and darting glances, every pair of eyes on me, as though I were the entertainment for the night. I looked at Mark, his jaw tight, but there was a flicker of victory in his eyes. He thought this was checkmate. He thought the humiliation would crush me into silence, force me into that tiny corner of invisibility I had lived in my entire life. And Lauren, she smirked at me with the kind of satisfaction only a sibling raised on favoritism could muster. It wasn't enough to steal my husband. She needed to destroy me too. I breathed slowly, forcing my face into calm composure. Inside my heart was a storm, but I had rehearsed this moment for weeks. I had envisioned it 100 ways, sometimes with screaming, sometimes with tears. But I learned something about rage. If you tame it, if you shape it, it becomes a weapon sharper than a knife. I let my voice ring out clear and steady, silencing the room. "Congratulations, Lauren," I said. "It's not every day you get to share such wonderful news. But since we're making announcements tonight, I think it's my turn." A ripple of unease moved across the table. Mark shifted his knuckles white against the tablecloth. Lauren's smirk faltered, confusion flickering in her eyes. My parents, who had sat frozen in a strange blend of shock and forced composure, straightened in their chairs. I reached into my purse and pulled out the first envelope. With deliberate slowness, I slid the medical report across the table toward Mark. "This," I said, "is the fertility report from your clinic last year. You remember, don't you? The one you told me said you were fine, that I was the broken one." He didn't move to touch it. So I opened it myself, my voice steady as I read aloud, "Azospermia. Zero sperm motility. In layman's terms, Mark, you're sterile. You cannot father a child. Not now, not ever." The silence that followed was deafening. Gasps erupted, silverware clattered against plates. My mother's face drained of color. Lauren's smirk dissolved into a mask of horror, and Mark, his mask-cracked eyes darting wildly, hands balling into fists on the table. "Which raises an interesting question," I continued, locking eyes with Lauren. "If Mark can't have children, then who exactly is the father of your baby?" Lauren's lips parted, but no sound came out. The room buzzed with whispers, the perfect storm of scandal brewing around us. I could have stopped there, but betrayal of this magnitude deserved the full reckoning. I pulled out the second envelope, the PI's report, and tossed it onto the table like a grenade. "And since we're on the subject of secrets, here are bank records. $20,000 withdrawn by Mark handed to you, Lauren. Payments for your rent, your handbags, your little luxuries. And a down payment on a house not in his name, not in yours, but in our mother's." Funny, isn't it, how betrayal in this family always finds a way to multiply? My mother flinched, clutching her pearls like a character from an old play. "Emily, don't you dare," she began, but her trembling voice was drowned out by the chaos at the table. The truth spilled across the white linen like red wine, staining everything it touched. Lauren tried to stammer a denial. Mark tried to bluster his way through it. My mother tried to hush me, but I didn't stop. For once I had the stage. For once my voice wasn't silenced. "Do you know how long I carried the weight of believing I was barren?" My voice cracked, raw and furious. "Do you know what it's like to cry yourself to sleep every month, hating yourself because the man you love tells you it's your fault? All the while he knew the truth. And you," I pointed at Lauren, "you thought you'd win by flaunting your betrayal on my birthday. But what you didn't know is that I was already ready for this moment." The room had grown so quiet you could hear the clink of a spoon drop 2 tables over. Mark finally exploded, his mask gone, shouting, "Enough, Emily! You don't know what you're talking about!" But his voice cracked with desperation, and it was too late. Everyone had already seen the truth. Lauren pushed back from the table, her face pale. She whispered something to Mark, but he shook his head violently. My mother muttered, "We can fix this. We can keep this quiet," but the damage was done. And me, I sat straighter than I had in years. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the invisible one. I wasn't the weak one. I wasn't the sister they could walk over, the wife they could deceive. I was the woman who had taken their carefully constructed lies and set them ablaze in front of everyone who mattered to them. And I wasn't done yet, because beneath those lies, more secrets waited to be unearthed. Secrets that would shake not just my marriage, not just my sisterhood, but the very foundation of my family itself. Mark's shout still echoed when I leaned back in my chair, the chaos unraveling around me like a storm I had been waiting years to unleash. I should have felt broken. I should have felt humiliated. But instead, I felt a strange calm. Power, even. Because for once, I wasn't the one drowning in silence, I was the one holding their secrets by the throat. Lauren's face contorted, her practiced smirk replaced with panic. She glanced at my mother like a child begging for rescue. And my mother, God, the look she gave me. It was pure rage, the kind you only see when someone's mask slips, and all that's left is naked truth. She wasn't horrified by what Mark or Lauren had done, she was horrified that I had revealed it. "Emily," she hissed, her voice sharp as glass. "Enough, you're embarrassing yourself." I laughed, then a sound that startled even me. "Embarrassing myself," I said, my voice carrying across the restaurant. "No, Mother, I'm embarrassing you. Because this isn't just about a cheating husband or a scheming sister. This is about the lies this family has been feeding me since childhood." I turned to the crowd that had gathered closer, curious diners leaning in. "Did you know," I said, pointing at Lauren, "that when she ruined my college fund, my parents told me I was irresponsible. When she crashed my car, they made me pay for the repairs while she walked away free. When I worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over my head, my mother told me Lauren deserved help more than I did because she was the fragile one." My father shifted uncomfortably, his silence as damning as his complicity. He had always played the role of quiet enabler, letting my mother's favoritism rule our household. Now he looked at his plate, unwilling to meet my eyes, unwilling to acknowledge his part in it all. Lauren stammered, "This isn't about the past, Emily. Stop twisting things." But her voice trembled. The confidence she carried into that dinner had drained away like water from a broken glass. "Oh, it's about the past," I shot back. "It's about every single time you all made me believe I wasn't enough. Every time you cut me down so you could keep her on a pedestal." I turned to Mark, my voice dropping sharp as a blade. "And you marrying me wasn't about love, was it? It was about convenience, about access, about using me until you could build your little empire with her." Mark slammed his fist on the table. "You're insane, Emily." But his voice cracked under the weight of my evidence still lying in plain sight. I reached for the bank statements again, holding them up for everyone to see. "Insane. Then explain the payments. Explain the down payment on the house in my mother's name. Explain why you two thought you could hide everything behind my back while making me believe I was barren and broken." Lauren's tears finally came, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You don't understand," she whispered, shaking her head. "You don't understand what it's like being me." And that, God help me, that nearly made me laugh again. "No, Lauren," I said coldly. "I understand perfectly. You were always first, always favored, always forgiven. And even now, after betraying me in the worst way imaginable, you expect to be pitied." The restaurant was silent except for the clinking of glasses in the distance. I saw it then, the crack in my mother's composure. Her lips trembled, her eyes darted to the evidence, to the baby bump, to the people staring. She knew there was no salvaging this. The perfect image she had curated for decades had been shattered in the span of 15 minutes. But there was one last piece I hadn't revealed yet. One final blade. "Lauren," I said, my voice steady, "before you announced your little secret tonight, did you ever stop to wonder if Mark was lying to you too?" Her eyes snapped to mine, wide with confusion. "You see, he might have told you I couldn't give him children," I continued. "But the truth is, he can't give anyone children. Not you, not me, not anyone. And that means one thing." The realization hit her like a wave. Her mouth fell open, her hands instinctively clutching her stomach. She looked at Mark betrayal flooding her expression as the truth dawned. If he was sterile, then the baby wasn't his. The silence was deafening. Gasps rippled through the restaurant again. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Mark's face turned ashen, his jaw slack. And Lauren. She looked like the ground had just vanished beneath her feet. I leaned forward, my voice quiet but sharp enough to cut. Happy birthday to me. And with that, I stood gathering my purse, my documents, and my dignity. I walked out of that restaurant with every eye on me, not as the forgotten daughter, not as the betrayed wife, but as the woman who had turned their lives into ashes. But even as I pushed open the door to the night air, I knew this wasn't the end. Because if my husband, my sister, and my mother were capable of conspiring against me, then there were surely more secrets hidden in the shadows, and I was done being blind. The cold night air rushed against my skin as I stepped out of the restaurant, the weight of dozens of eyes still burning into my back. For a moment, I stood there on the sidewalk, heart-pounding chest, heaving my hands, still clutching the envelopes like they were weapons. I had walked away victorious, or so it seemed. But victories like these are never clean. They leave scars, and they awaken truths that have been buried for years. Jessica was waiting for me by the curb, her car engine idling. When she saw my face, her eyes widened. "You did it, didn't you?" she whispered as I slid into the passenger seat. I didn't need to answer. She saw it in the steel of my expression. But as we drove away, a hollowness spread inside me. Betrayal doesn't end when you expose it. It festers, it grows new heads like a hydra. And part of me knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The following days were a blur of chaos. The fallout from the dinner spread through the family like wildfire. Relatives called demanding explanations. My mother tried to spin the narrative, insisting I had staged a scene, that I had fabricated the documents. But the evidence was undeniable. Copies of the medical report, bank transfers, and financial records were already in Jessica's possession. I had made sure no one could bury the truth again. Lauren, meanwhile, disappeared from social media entirely. Friends told me she'd gone into hiding, ashamed and furious, desperate to salvage what little reputation she had left. And Mark tried to come back to me. It was almost laughable. He showed up at my apartment door 3 days later, unshaven, his eyes hollow. He begged me to listen, to forgive him, to believe his lies one more time. "We can fix this, Emily," he pleaded. "You're my wife. I made a mistake, but it's you I love." For a moment I stared at him, the man I had once believed was my partner, my protector, my future. I thought about the nights I cried myself to sleep believing I was barren, believing I had failed him. I thought about the years he let me drown in shame while he carried the truth in silence. And I realized something: love cannot exist where cruelty takes root. "Love doesn't destroy," I whispered, "and you destroyed me." Then I shut the door in his face. That should have been the end. But life has a way of peeling back layers even after the wound is already raw. 2 weeks later, Jessica called me in a rush. "Emily, you need to see this." She sent over documents the investigator had dug up. Bank accounts not just tied to Lauren but to another woman. Another woman who had been receiving monthly transfers for nearly 3 years. A woman who lived only 2 towns away. Mark hadn't just betrayed me with my sister. He had built an entire web of deceit, funding multiple lives behind my back. And the name on those transfers chilled me: Rebecca, my cousin. It was like the floor gave out beneath me. This wasn't just a husband's betrayal or a sister's treachery. This was rot that spread through the entire fabric of my family. A conspiracy so tangled I could hardly tell where it began or where it ended. When I confronted Rebecca, she didn't deny it. She looked at me with hollow eyes, her voice barely a whisper. "He promised me, Emily. He promised me everything. And your mother, she knew." My knees nearly buckled. My mother knew. Of course she did. She had been part of it from the start, ensuring her chosen daughter, her golden child, would always be shielded. She didn't care if it meant sacrificing me, her other daughter, time and time again. The betrayal wasn't just Mark's. It wasn't just Lauren's. It was systemic. It was my entire family against me. I sat in my apartment that night staring at the stack of evidence Jessica had compiled, and I made a vow. They thought they could break me by stripping me of love, by weaving lies around me until I suffocated. But what they had done instead was hand me every weapon I needed. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about survival. It was about justice. And it was about making sure every last secret they had tried to bury saw the light of day. I was no longer Emily the quiet one, Emily the invisible, Emily the weak. I was Emily the woman who would burn down the empire of lies my family had built brick by brick, secret by secret. And I knew deep in my bones that when the ashes settled, I would finally be free. Free. That word echoed in my head like a distant bell, and yet freedom was still out of reach. Because with every secret that surfaced, another one seemed to claw its way from the shadows. And the more I uncovered, the clearer it became. My family had never been a family at all. They were a machine one that devoured me to keep their own illusions alive. When Rebecca admitted everything, I felt the kind of rage that doesn't burn hot, but instead freezes you from the inside out. My cousin, my blood, and my mother always in the center orchestrating it all. How many times had I looked into her eyes desperate for comfort, only to see cold calculation hiding behind her concern? I knew then that this wasn't just personal, it was systemic. Mark was a symptom, but my mother was the disease. She had built her life on manipulation, feeding Lauren's vanity, shielding her mistakes, and keeping me small enough to be disposable. And she had welcomed Mark into that circle because he fit her pattern, deceitful cunning, and willing to use me as a pawn. Jessica pressed me not to wait. "Emily, you have enough evidence to go to court now," she said, her voice firm. "Bank records, medical reports, witness testimony, you can bury them legally." But something in me hesitated. Court would give me justice, yes, but justice wasn't what my heart craved. My heart craved truth laid bare, undeniable, public. Not whispered in courtrooms, not buried in legal jargon. I wanted them exposed, stripped of their masks, forced to live with the wreckage of what they'd built. So I set a trap. My mother's annual charity gala was approaching, an event she curated with manic obsession, the crown jewel of her social calendar. She invited politicians, CEOs, high society matrons, the kind of crowd she lived to impress. And this year, she had named Lauren as the face of the event, parading her pregnancy as though it were some trophy of status. I knew it was the perfect stage. Jessica and I worked in silence for weeks. I contacted the investigator again, securing photos, recordings, and bank slips. Together we assembled a presentation that was impossible to refute. Every lie cataloged, every betrayal documented, every hidden transfer and secret affair laid out in sharp, undeniable detail. The night of the gala, I dressed in black satin, my hair pulled into a sleek knot. Not to fade into the background, but to become the shadow that swallowed their carefully lit world. When I arrived, Lauren was already there, glowing in her designer gown, her bump showcased proudly. Mark stood near her, forced smiles for the cameras, while my mother hovered like a queen surveying her court. Their laughter floated through the air, polished and practiced. They didn't see me at first. They never did. But when the speeches began, and my mother took the stage to bask in her applause, I stepped forward. The spotlight caught me, and for the first time in years, I didn't flinch. My voice rang out steady and clear. "I have an announcement," I said, echoing Lauren's cruel performance at my birthday dinner. But unlike hers, mine isn't built on lies. The room shifted instantly. Whispers spread like wildfire. My mother's face froze, panic flashing in her eyes as she realized she wasn't in control. I handed the microphone to Jessica, who began clicking through the slides we'd prepared. Bank records appeared on the screen, transfers from Mark to Lauren to Rebecca to my mother. Photographs of my husband sneaking into my cousin's house. Copies of the fertility report proving his sterility. Each page landed like a blade, cutting deeper into the facade my family had built. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Eyes turned from admiration to horror, from envy to disgust. My mother rushed toward me, her voice frantic. "Emily, stop this, you'll ruin us." And that was the moment I had been waiting for. I turned to her, the microphone in my hand, trembling only slightly. "You ruined me first. You chose lies over love, betrayal over family, cruelty over kindness. And now everyone sees who you really are." Lauren collapsed into a chair, her mascara streaking as she sobbed. Mark stormed toward the exit, his career and reputation in tatters. Rebecca slipped out quietly, too ashamed to face the stairs. And my mother stood there frozen, her empire of illusion crumbling around her. For the first time, I didn't feel small, I didn't feel invisible, I felt whole. The applause didn't come, nor did cheers. Just silence, the kind of silence that means truth has landed and no one can look away. And in that silence, I smiled, because I knew they would never recover from this. The silence of that ballroom carried me for weeks. Not applause, not sympathy, just silence. The kind of silence that follows an explosion when the dust hangs thick and everyone is still counting the pieces. I had dropped the truth like a bomb, and my family would never look the same again. The fallout was swift. Mark's company suspended him within days, the scandal of his financial dealings spreading faster than he could contain. He tried to call me to beg, to threaten to bargain, but I never picked up. The last time I saw his name light up my phone, I blocked it. He had taken enough of my time, enough of my body, enough of my life. Lauren moved out of the city, whispers chasing her wherever she went. The baby's father was eventually revealed, and it wasn't Mark. It was a married man she'd been seeing on the side. The golden child, the one who could do no wrong, was left to face the humiliation she had once so eagerly prepared for me. Rebecca, my cousin, sent me a letter, handwritten pages of apologies and justifications. I read it once, then tore it up. Some betrayals cannot be patched with words. And my mother retreated into her home, curtains, drawn phone lines, silent. For a woman who had built her identity on appearances, the loss of her carefully constructed image was the cruelest punishment of all. She didn't lose me at that gala. She lost the mask she had worn her entire life. As for me, I walked through the wreckage with something I hadn't felt in years: clarity. For so long I had begged for scraps of love, begged for approval that never came, begged to be seen. That night, standing in front of a ballroom full of people, I finally understood something: I didn't need them to see me. I needed to see myself. I had believed their lies for too long, that I was weak, that I was barren, that I was invisible. But the truth was, I had survived betrayals most people couldn't imagine. I had carried the weight of secrets that would have broken others, and I had turned that pain into power. Freedom didn't come with their downfall, it came with my release. I no longer owed them silence. I no longer owed them forgiveness. I owed only myself the chance to build a life beyond their shadows. One evening I stood by my window, the city lights glowing like scattered stars, and I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who bent herself to keep the peace, who swallowed her rage, who stayed quiet to be loved. I whispered to her, "We made it. They didn't destroy us." That was my revenge. Not their ruin, not their humiliation, but my survival, my voice, my truth. If you are watching this and you have ever been betrayed by the very people meant to protect you, know this: you are not defined by their cruelty. You are not the sum of their lies. You are stronger than you realize, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand, speak, and refuse to be silenced. So, if my story touched you, please like this video, share it so others can hear it. Subscribe for more stories like mine, and leave a comment if you've ever found the strength to rise after betrayal. Because together we remind each other survival is the greatest victory.